The Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven. "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Poor Jeremiah. He tried to tell the people and their leaders that they were heading for a fall. The people of Judah had abandoned their covenant with God and were going to be punished, the city destroyed, the people taken away in chains. But they wouldn't listen. Not Josiah, not Jehoaz, not Jehoiakim, not Jehoiakim, not even Zedekiah. Nobody would listen to Jeremiah. Instead, they made him an enemy of the state. They threw him down a well, they locked him up in prison, anything they could think of to silence him and his dire words. But in the end, just as he predicted, there came a day when the mighty army of Nebuchadnezzar breached the walls of Jerusalem, turned the temple and the city to rubble, and carried most of the population off to Babylon. Jeremiah railed against Judah. He warned them that they would get their due. He believed that if the nations of Judah did not change, it would be punished. He also believed that the punishment would transform the people to a state of righteousness. It's a concept we're all familiar with. Punishment, or the fear of punishment, is supposed to change our behavior. Parents frequently use this method of controlling and correcting the behavior of their children. The child does wrong, gets punished, and hopefully never repeats the bad behavior. However, if you are a parent, I am not, but I've heard stories, you probably realize that it doesn't always work this way. Walter Wangerin, a popular Lutheran pastor and a prolific author, says the law can shame you, the law can blame you, the law can restrain you, but it cannot change you, because the law, as noble and necessary as it is, can't give you real freedom. Wangerin tells a story in one of his many books about his son Matthew. One evening, when Matthew was still in elementary school, Wangerin was sitting on the edge of his bed listening to his son's bedtime prayers. He happened to glance down and saw that Matthew's bottom dresser door was ajar, and it was crammed with comic books. Now, he knew that Matthew's allowance wasn't enough to buy this many books. When he investigated, he found that almost all of them were stamped with a public library stamp, but without a return date. The next day, he called the librarian to tell her what his son had done and asked if she could help him by laying down the law with Matthew. She was a good librarian, and she knew how to do that. She called the boy in and with sternness explained the law. Matthew gravely nodded, but he kept stealing comic books. The second time this transgression came to light was when the family spent the summer in another town where Wangren was filling in for a pastor on extended leave. Matthew frequented the corner drugstore and helped himself to handfuls of comic books. He even managed to smuggle them back home in his suitcase at the end of the summer. Since it wasn't practical to return these books to the rightful owner when they were discovered, the rightful owner was several hundred miles away, and it certainly was not right for the boy to keep them, Pastor Wangaren started a fire in the fireplace and began to preach to Matthew on the seventh commandment, "Thou shalt not steal," all the while dramatically tossing the comic books into the fire one by one. This did not have the desired effects. Matthew was found a third time with a stash of stolen comic books. Wangaren and his wife were beside themselves with worry. How could they make Matthew stop stealing and follow the law? They decided it was time for a drastic step, something they rarely even considered resorting to. They would have to spank their son. They brought him into the room, explained the law against stealing and its consequences, and then Wangaren spanked him. Matthew didn't cry during his punishment. He also didn't show any sign of remorse. Upset by what he had just done, Wangaren left the room and, filled with worry and despair over his son, he broke down and he wept. It wasn't until a number of years later, when Matthew was in the car with his mother, having one of those conversations that starts, "Remember that time when," that Matthew brought up the many times he was an effective comic book thief. He turned to his mother and said, "Do you know why I stopped?" She said, "Sure, because your dad finally spanked you." "No," Matthew said, "that wasn't why I stopped. I stopped because Dad cried. I stopped because Dad cried." The prophet Jeremiah, sitting among the smoldering embers of Jerusalem, sitting there with the tattered remnant of the population that Nebuchadnezzar has left behind. And it seemed unreal. But what made it unreal wasn't the accuracy of his prediction that Judah would be punished. What made it unreal was the emptiness of the result. Jeremiah realized that he was looking at the real fruits of punishment. Not transformation, but smoke and ash and destruction. I believe that's when Jeremiah understood that punishment was a useless tool for teaching anyone anything. And I believe he wept. He wept for the people of God. But there was hope, even amidst the destruction. Jeremiah began to hear God speak of the day when the population would return. Jeremiah heard God say, "I will watch over them as they build and plant once again." And then Jeremiah received from God the greatest insight of his life, words that we heard today. "I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah." Not like the covenant that I made with their ancestors when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant that they broke. No, this will not be a do right or pay the price style covenant, something that many Christians still believe in today. Instead, God says, "I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they will be my people." No longer are people's evil desires to be kept in check by the threat of punishment. Instead, the people's natural desire will be for what is good and right. What once was a law, an external restraint, will now be inscribed in the human heart. And how will that happen? The prophecy that Jeremiah makes says, "They shall know me from the least of them to the greatest, for I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more." I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more. Can it really be so simple? Forgiveness and love? Wangerin discovered this truth through the love that he had for his son and the love and forgiveness offered by his son, who didn't carry anger for the spanking he received. Jeremiah discovered this truth when crouched among the ruins of Jerusalem. He realized that the angry warnings he had spewed for so long were totally ineffective. The law can shame you. The law can blame you. The law can restrain you. The law can set up a noble civil society, but it cannot change your heart. It cannot give you the freedom with which God created you. Only God's love and God's tears can change us and give us any real freedom. Amen.